Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 254. I didn't learn how to make a movie in film school. What I learned in film school was to express yourself with pictures and sound. But learning to make films is totally different. Martin Scorsese.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my Indie Film Hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's episode is brought to you by Black Box. Black Box is a new platform and community that is all about financial freedom for filmmakers like you. If you join Black Box, you will be transformed from being a worker to being a maker of your own content. And you'll be making steady passive income from the global market. Black Box currently allows you to upload your stock footage once, get it to many global agencies, and then allows you to share that passive income stream with your collaborators. Whether you want to submit old footage that's been sitting around in your hard drives or create brand new content, Black Box is for you. It's really quite revolutionary. With Black Box, filmmakers can concentrate on making great content while Black Box takes care of all the business BS. Just visit www.blackbox.global to find out more. Today's show is also sponsored by Studio Unknown. Studio Unknown is a crack team of audio post professionals known for quality sound on any indie budget. Whether you need a lush surround sound mix or a quick festival submission pass, Studio Unknown can help you with all of your post sound needs, from sound design and mix to Foley, ADR, and even a custom score. Contact Studio Unknown and mention the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, and you'll get 50% off 1 day of ADR or 10% off your complete post sound package. Just go to studiounknown.com. Now, today on the show, we have Brandon Reilly, who is a first assistant director, and I wanted to have him on the show because wanted to kind of put a spotlight on first assistant directors and their importance and how to do it properly. We discuss how not to do it properly, and sometimes you need them, sometimes you don't, but if you can afford it, you should always have one because they are wonderful and very helpful if you've got the right one. And I've shot with first ADs, without first ADs, with good first ADs, with bad first ADs, and with legendary first ADs. So if you can afford it, definitely use one. So Brandon and I get into the weeds about what a first AD really does, how to do the job. And if you're interested, if you're listening out there and this might be interesting to you to become a first AD and how becoming a first AD can get you into the Directors Guild, which hopefully maybe leads you into other work down the line, it's a very interesting conversation. So without any further ado, please enjoy my talk with Brandon Reilly. I'd like to welcome to the show Brandon Reilly, man. Thank you so much for jumping on the show with me, man.
Thanks, Alex. Glad to be here.
We never had a first AD on the show, so I am going to beat you up on how to do it properly because I've been with too many who don't do it properly.
Well, hope I can help.
No worries, man. So how did you get into the film business in the first place?
Well, it's a funny story. When I was 7 years old, I met a famous film producer. He was a son of Michael Illich, who owns Little Caesars Pizza. Mm-hmm. And I told my dad, it's like, I want to be a film producer too. And my dad was like, sure, you can do that. And so, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I can do this, And in junior high and high school, I got involved in journalism. I really became obsessed with story and telling stories and taking pictures. And that was something that interested me. Mm-hmm. So filmmaking was this natural thing that I was, obsessed about. Went to film school, did the typical thing, kind of regretted it, kind of didn't. I don't know if it was helpful, because I feel like I can learn more in a film set than I can in 3 years of film school.
I would agree with you on that, bro. I would agree with you. I went to film school too, and everything I learned. You know what I learned in film school? How to wrap a cable.
Right.
That was really important.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about film school you learn is writing, I think, and that's helping me today and how to think. Mm-hmm. I studied philosophy as well, and I'm working on helping people with scripts and different things like that. And I think that's one thing it's hard to pick up. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I did the film school thing, and then I worked, as a videographer for several years, just doing lots of random videos, corporate videos, commercials, all types of things. But I was wearing a lot of hats. I was like writing and shooting and editing and mostly editing and hating that, and spending 12 hours in a dark room. So I was like, I need to move to LA. So and that's what I did. So I saved up some money, moved to LA, and I couldn't find a job, couldn't get anything really, and so I started driving cars and as a valet driver. Mm-hmm. And that's what you want to do after film school is drive cars.
Obviously, because that's going to help you pay back that student debt quicker.
Right, exactly. So, but then I got my first break working for free on a TV pilot as a grip.
I love that. I love that you just said, I got my big break working for free.
Yeah, so that was the big break, was working for free as a grip.
Right.
And I did that for half a day before they realized that I sucked as a grip, but they needed somebody in the camera department. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I can do that, because I did that a little bit in college, because I used to think I wanted to be a DP. And so I did that camera AC thing. And after that show, working for free, I got paid jobs, right? And the paid jobs paid a lot of money, like $50 a day.
Holy cow. What are you going to do with all that cash? You better find some tax havens, man.
So I'm continuing to valet drive and work $50 a day on all these films as a camera AC. And then actually my big break was the DP that I was working as an AC from. She was married to a producer, and he was about to produce some indie horror film. And I somehow convinced him to let me first AD his movie, right? Mm-hmm. And I'd never first AD before. I'd never second AD before. I'd never really been a PA on a set. Mm-hmm. But he believed in me, and so it was great. So the movie was a 6-day shoot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we shot a movie in 6 days. So it was very challenging. I was wearing
45 hats.
So hold on 1 second. My alarm is going off for some reason. So yeah, wearing 45 hats. We're shooting 12 pages a day. It was nuts. But that's where I got my first big break, I feel like, because after that I got the second job and the third job and the fourth job. And so then I've been working as an AD for many years, and I got into the Directors Guild. And then I started producing. Now I'm in the Producers Guild. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm also trying to develop my own projects and working with other people, writing scripts and doing that. And so that's kind of my journey in a nutshell.
Well, I was telling you before when we were off air, I was telling you that you are the definition of hustle. I mean, if you go to his IMDb, guys, and I'll put it in the show notes, it's insane. You're just constantly working. It was pretty remarkable, and all the other stuff that you do on the side as well. You definitely are a hustler, and you got to be in this business without question.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. Last year, maybe it's 2 years ago, I was not working, and I saw this thing on Facebook, and it was like, hey, we need a first CD to cover. Our first AD got sick, right? And I was like, oh, this is me. I can do this, right? So I emailed the guy. I was like, I'm your guy. And then the next morning they call. I was like, how fast can you be here? Because it's in Vegas. And they're like, I'll be there in however
4 hours, 3 hours?
Right.
Sure.
So I packed my bag in 1 hour, fly to, and then drive to Vegas, and then continue. And I jump on set and try to get things going, right? Mm-hmm. So I do that show, and then the next show after that was this. They had fired a first AD, and so the next show was in Atlanta, but it was starting a day after this other show in Vegas. Mm-hmm. So I had essentially have no prep on both of these shows, and it was just one thing after them. And there's so many things like that where it's you have to make these decisions. Are you gonna
do this or not?
Yeah, but yeah, it was definitely, I had to hustle to get those,
Now let me ask you a question, because a lot of people listening don't know, what is the job of a first assistant director or first AD?
Right. So in my opinion, the job of the first AD is really to make it so the director can focus on the creative, right? Mm-hmm. And he's not worried about logistics. So, because if you try to do both, it's just so much for one person.
Mm-hmm.
So, I try to put out as many fires as possible. And so I'm on the radio talking to the second AD and the second, and I'm talking to the PAs and all the other departments saying, hey, bring this actor. We're going to do a blocking. And how are we doing on the next scene? I'm talking to the costume designer and saying, hey, we're having to change this wardrobe. Can you get a different look? And while the director is talking to the DP about the shot, he's not having to worry about that logistical thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I do work as a first AD, I'm working very close with the DP and the director, and we're essentially working as a team to make all these decisions. Like, how do we get through the day? And some first ADs have a certain way where, people have heard the first ADs scream or yell, and some are very calm or assertive.
Right.
And, I try to be in between. I don't try to yell or anything, but the first ADs can sometimes be looked at as the bad guy.
Well, you guys are. You're the party pooper, man. You guys are the party poopers. But you need that. You need an adult on set. And a lot of times the director and the actors and the DP are all in the creative mode and like, let's just get this shot, and that's going to only take 4 hours. I'm like, well, then we're out of our schedule's off, and that's your job.
Yeah, and I think what's difficult about it is that you have to be very diplomatic because you can't just say, hey, you can't just say to the director, hey, we're moving on, because it's really the director's decision whether you're moving on or not.
You're just there to tell them, hey, if you don't, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I inform him, hey, I think we're behind, or in my opinion, we are behind. Is there a way that we can catch up? And so I want to be there with solutions too. Like, well, here's a couple of things. Could we do this in a one, or could we?
Right. Instead of 45 takes on 45 different angles, can we just do this in a one and move on?
Yeah. It's having those lunch meetings with the DP and the director. Like, what can we do to come up with the rest of the day?
No. So I want to kind of focus in on this, because a lot of first time directors and filmmakers or inexperienced directors don't understand the importance of the schedule. Don't understand that you've got an 8-hour, 10-hour, 12-hour day. And if you're shooting a feature, then if you like first day, you're behind a page. Well, you've got to make that page up somewhere. If by day 2, you're now behind 2 pages. So let's say that's 3 pages down, you're never going to finish the movie. If you keep going down this path, you're never going to finish the movie, and the whole thing's going to become a fiasco.
Right.
And that's the job of the first AD, is to kind of really hone in on, look, we've got to make the day. And a good director, a seasoned director, understands that, correct?
Yeah, and I think, but some of them don't care, so it's a kind of a thing where, you have to be the middleman between the director and the producer. Like, can we even go over, And so it's like, well, they'll ask me, we'll go talk to the producer, say we need the shot. And then I'll go talk to the producer, and they'll say, we'll go back to the director and say we don't have the money for the shot. So, it's kind of one of those things of, you're trying to be the peacekeeper essentially, and keep things moving. But I'm always trying to fight for the best movie. Right. And sometimes the best movie needs to go into overtime. Sometimes, the best movie needs more extras and more money, Mm-hmm. And so I do sometimes go to the producers and say, hey, I know that you guys budgeted 100 extras for this movie. I did my math. I sat with the director. I came out with 140. Can we find a way to increase the budget on this category? So it's being realistic, and instead of like saying, okay, we only have 100 to work with, I guess we'll just have to live with it,
or do some visual effects.
Right.
Now, can you explain how a first AD breaks down a script? Which I know that's a mystery to a lot of filmmakers. We're like, oh, you give it to a first AD. Oh, I need the script broken down. What is that exactly?
It's actually a lot easier than people think it is. Mm-hmm. But I get hired all the time to just do a script breakdown and a budget, probably on a monthly basis, people call me like, hey, can you do a schedule and a budget? So the easiest way to explain it is, you look at every scene in a script, and we have to have the scene number, and we look for how long is the scene? Is it 5/8 of a page? Who's in the scene? We have, John, Mary, and
Joseph.
Joseph, right? Three wise men, right?
Yes, exactly.
So, and then, what are there any props in the scene? Where is the scene? What location is, where is it at?
Is there stunts in the scene? Is there
stunts?
In the scene, right?
Yeah. So, and then the program that we use is called Movie Magic Scheduling is the main program. There's other ones like Synchronize, but
Gorilla, right?
But the nice thing about Movie Magic is because so many people have it, if you send them the file, they can easily open it.
It's the industry standard.
Yeah. So that's the nice thing about it. Yes, it's kind of antiquated, but it's a cool software. When I was in college, I didn't really know much about assistant directing or Movie Magic. So I was like, how do people do this thing like you're talking about? But there's YouTube videos that EP puts out that you can watch and learn. But the other thing is, like, you can ask a first AD, like, hey, will you show me a little bit of this? And it only takes like 5 minutes to show you the program, essentially. But once you get the hang of it, it's not difficult. I think what's difficult is once you break it down is moving the strips around and actually scheduling it, because that's where the producers will get on the phone with you and be like, okay, well, we have 15 days, but this actor can only work 3 days and this actor can only work 4 days, and we can only be on this location on this one day. And so all these parameters come into play when you actually start shooting that aren't involved when the film is actually budgeted. And so that can create a real nightmare.
Without question.
Yeah.
The schedule in general, though, is like a living, breathing thing. It's constantly changing. It's constantly moving around because there's so many parameters that affect it. This actor is now leaving a day early, and the other actor is coming in a day early. So now we got to change that around. And the location dropped. We got to move to another location. There's rain coming, and there's just so many things, especially in a feature when you're 30 days, 45 days, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. There's so many different parameters. And I can only imagine on those like $200 million movies.
Oh, I know.
They have to have like an army of ADs to just kind of, because that's like moving an independent, film as an AD, I'm imagining it's a smaller ship. So you can cut and you're kind of speedboat. But when you're moving that $200 million visual effects extravaganza, it's like moving a carrier.
Yeah. I mean, the movie Dunkirk, they had, 5 different countries they shot in. So, can you imagine? But, as the first AD, I think it's almost like a ship commander, or, like a battle commander where you're all about strategy, right? And how are you going to win the battle? So, every day on the film set feels like a battle sometimes. I don't know about you, but
every
it does
day,
for me.
every day. Every day you go in and you're just like, all right, it's not going to come out the way I planned.
Right.
I'm not going to get all my shots. Let's just do what we can and let's move forward on it. And you just don't know. It's just so many. Yeah. There's just too many parameters, man. There's just too many parameters of things just happening.
Yeah. So if you take all that responsibility and try to force it on a director, it's just too much for one person to think about. It's like I'm overloaded just thinking about logistics. I can't think about the creative.
And I've done it. It is not easy on smaller things. Not on a feature or anything, but on smaller things. Well, actually, I did do it on a feature once, but it was a very controlled, very small situation, so I was able to do it. But I've also been doing it for 20 odd years, so it's a little bit different. But it is not easy. No, it's not. I'd much rather have a good first AD. Right.
Yeah, because even if I was directing something, I'd want a first AD. Just because you want the freedom to be creative and not have to think about who do I need to bring to set next, and because you're as a director, you're constantly thinking about is the scene work? Is the acting good? What's the shot like? Talking to the DP, So there's already, and then you have 100 different questions from each department, they're trying to answer. So, I love being a first AD, but it's also very stressful sometimes. So I
sometimes?
think
I don't know
depending
how you guys
on the
do it.
show.
I have no idea how you guys do it in general. And you said something earlier. Well, there's two things I wanted to kind of touch that you said earlier. That you could show a filmmaker or a producer or director how to use movie magic, but that's just a piece of software. Whereas in the art form of using that to schedule is something that it takes years to an experience to be able to do, because where there's going to be, there's a pitfall right there. Oh, there's a cliff that we don't want to go over. But that's just, so just because you might know the software doesn't mean that you can schedule your own movie if you have no experience. Do you agree?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you could do a rough schedule. Anybody can do a rough schedule, but sure. In terms of like budgeting something, but like even stuff like understanding how to shoot a split or nights, or how much night you actually need before you can start shooting, So if the sun sets at 7:48, I know that we can probably start shooting around 8:30. If we're, going full speed. We can't start shooting at 7:30 just because of my experience is too bright. So, those are the types of things that it takes years of experience and you kind of learn, on the job really as working as a second or as a first, just collaborating with other ADs and being like, hey, well, what about this and this, and that's the other thing I like about it is you are working with other people and bouncing ideas off. So
it's problem solving. We're all just trying to get across the river.
In general, that's what I see my job primarily as, is a problem solver. As a first AD or a line producer, there's like a list of 100 problems and I've got to solve them. And that's what I like about it.
Now, you also mentioned about yellers and screamers and also quiet first ADs. I've worked with all. I can't stand yellers because I feel personally it doesn't really, at least for my sets. I mean, if you're on a Joe Pickett set, that might be different. But if you're, by the way, guys, Joe Pickett, look him up. He's a very famous commercial director, and the stories will speak for themselves. But generally speaking, I like to have a really cool, calm, relaxed, have a fun kind of atmosphere. And when I always found that when I see first ADs yelling is because they're losing control. And this is now their last line of defense. But there are also times where I kind of see where it's needed. So there is a balance, but generally speaking, the quiet, controlled first ADs who know what they're doing, and have the respect of the crew, which is a huge thing. If you lose your crew, you're done as a first AD.
Right. Yeah, and I think there's a difference between yelling and being loud, because sometimes you have to be loud and be like, if you're in a open space on a field, you might have to use a megaphone. You might have to, do this. Yeah, I'm with you. There's no reason to yell, and honestly, it like you said, it makes people feel like you're out of control.
And with a seasoned crew, the seasoned crew will eat you alive. I mean, a seasoned Hollywood crew with a yelling first AD who's inexperienced, it's done. They'll just go on doing their own thing and they'll ignore them, which happened to me on a few sets. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, one thing that I try to do on every movie is I meet with the director and the DP and myself. If I'm the first AD or the producer, and we have a little powwow and we talk about how do we want the set to be run, because I think sometimes, you're all coming together. You never work with each other for the most part, unless you have before. And so everybody has these different assumptions, Some first-time directors think that they're supposed to direct the extras when that's really like the AD's job. Yeah. So sometimes it's like an educational meeting. I was like, okay, so, and then I asked the director, how do you want the set to be run? What do you want? And then I'll talk about like what some of my expectations are, that if we feel behind, how are we going to address it on the day? Just, and that's like an hour meeting. And that hour meeting has really changed the way I work because we can point back to that meeting. Hey, remember when we talked about that? Or just knowing that they know that, hey, we're going to set the extras. You don't have to worry about that. But if you want to help us figure out this one piece, get dirty, let us know. And I think that's been helpful for me, I guess.
Yeah, again, communication always is a big help when working on a set. Now, you've mentioned second ADs and third ADs. What are the differences between the multiple, and I've seen many multiple versions of ADs out on the set?
Yeah, it's funny. I've actually never been a second, so I can tell you a little about it, but I've never done it. And it's mostly have to do with working with the background actors and working with talent. And, if you have 300 extras that day, you might have several seconds and they're just all giving the background. They're setting background. They're giving them direction. They're wrangling them.
Are they, would you consider them like glorified PAs at that point? Because I've heard that like a lot of PAs just go like, okay, you're the second today.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's a credit that's given to a PA if you don't have a second. It's really the first AD's right-hand man on set a lot of times, in terms of a lot of times the second AD's at base camp doing a call sheet. And sometimes the second AD is on set helping with background, different things. But a lot of times they're so much paperwork that they're just not able to be on set as much.
Sure. And
then a third AD, the same thing as a second. It's just in a different country. They call them different things. So like in UK, they might call them a third AD.
Got it.
Or fourth AD or whatever.
Well, sometimes you might need it because there's like 5,000 people that you're trying to wrangle.
Well, yeah, and in the US, we wouldn't have a third or fourth. We'd have like an additional second AD, and then we'd have a second, and you could have an additional second, stuff like that.
Sure, exactly.
And sometimes you might have two first ADs if it's a TV show and they're rotating and all that kind of stuff. So it gets really complicated.
Now you also do line producing. Can you talk a little bit about what the job of a line producer is versus a UPM?
Yeah, I'm not the best at explaining that, but I'll do my best.
Sure.
So the line producer, in my opinion, starts early on with the film, and they might open bank accounts. They might get the tax incentives, get all the accounts opened, and then handle the budget, do a lot of the major hires, and then a UPM would come on later in the game and take over some of those responsibilities, in terms of hiring the crew, managing payroll, working with the accountants and stuff. Really, the two overlap a lot. But on a big show, I think they're important to have both because there's so much to do. You don't want to just have another PA. You don't want
no.
So I did a show for the CW where I was the line producer and we had a UPM, and we kind of split responsibilities a little bit, and it was very helpful because I was busy all day, but there's some shows where I don't have a UPM. It's just kind of I'm the line producer, and that's what it is.
And for everybody listening, a UPM is a unit production manager, because a lot of people don't know what a UPM is in general. Now, what is the DGA, and how does a first AD get into the DGA?
So the DGA is the Directors Guild of America, and it's the union for directors, ADs, and UPMs. And
line producers and UPMs, right?
Well, so line producers are not actually in a union.
Okay.
So they're the one of the few categories that don't have a union. Same thing as producers aren't in a union, although you can join the Producers Guild, but that's more of a club.
Kind of like the ASC.
Yeah. So I'm in the Producers Guild, but I'm in a club basically.
You're not getting a pension. You're not getting a pension from the Producers Guild.
I mean, it's a cool club to be a part of. Don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
There's lots of parties and stuff like that. So the way you get into the DGA is very complicated, but the easiest way is to get into the DGA training program, and that happens every year. I think applications end around April or May, and essentially they take like 20 people. They accept, out of hundreds of applications. And if you get accepted, then you get like 2 or 3 years of work, and you work on big shows and TV shows as a trainee assistant or assistant trainee. And then you're set for life pretty much, because you built contacts, and you can easily step in to be a second AD and then go be a first. I did not do that. I tried, but I was not qualified enough. So the reason they don't always pick who you think they're going to pick. Sometimes they pick people with no film experience at all. Right. So you really don't know who these people are going to pick. And so I didn't let that discourage me. But so you can get on. The other option is to get on a show that flips, and that's how I got on. I was on a show where the UPM. I was hired before the UPM, and the UPM was a DGA UPM, and she wanted to make the show part of the union, and so that would mean that I would have to join, and so I joined.
Now, when you flip a show, that's generally not depending on the perspective, it's not a good thing sometimes.
Well, there's different flippings, I guess. Flipping for the DGA is only like 3 people or 4 people.
Right. It's not like IATSE.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's director, UPM first and second, or second. But yeah, the IATSE, which covers the rest of the crew, except for Teamsters, that's where people, and they mostly talk about flipping. That's what they mostly refer to. Because you really can't. It's really weird for a show to flip DGA. So I guess it wasn't really flipped. It was more of just I was grandfathered in, essentially.
Right. You snuck in the back door.
Yeah. So that's how I got in. And then the other way to get in is through working as a PA.
Yes, I remember that.
And like you get like 600 days or something like that, and have to be on some commercial QL. And you can call, if you have questions, you can call the DGA QL website, and they'll kind of walk you through how to be qualified. It's important though to keep call sheets and paycheck stubs. Yeah. Because if you can't prove that you worked, they'll kick off some of your days, So
if you PA for 600 days and you can prove it with call sheets and pay stubs, that's a way in to the DGA to get in, but that's a long way around.
Yeah, I mean, the other way, like I was working, was collecting days as a non-union first AD, and then I'm able to basically cash those days in to be listed as a certain QL. So that's the DGA is very complicated
because it's a wonderful union once you're in. I mean, the pension is insane, the medical is insane. It's one of the best unions in the business. Period.
Yeah, it really is a great union. Although it's sometimes tough because you can't take other work, you can't take non-union work, and whereas if I go work, if I'm an IATSE member, a lot of times they don't care as much,
Right.
And I didn't really know that going into it, but I know now. So, yeah.
Now, let me ask you a question. How do you handle a director that is just breaking down and completely losing control on set? Is there anything the first AD can do to help? Because I'm sure you've been on projects where it's a first-time director, or he's having a bad day, or he's having a bad movie, and it's just completely just breaking down, losing control. Is there anything you can do to help?
I don't know if losing control, I don't know about as much as out of control. I mean, maybe it's more of, I've dealt with directors that are yelling and screaming and firing people.
Okay. So out of control.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's always a tough thing because, everybody wants to keep their job, so it's like, but at the same time, the director will listen to me where they might not listen to the third PA, So I think it's challenging because you have to pull them aside and be like, hey, I know you're upset. Like there was this one instance where this actor, we thought that she cut her hair and he just wanted to get rid of her. And, it was an African-American actress, and she didn't really cut her hair. It was like they had these braids things, So,
right.
But I was like, it's like, if we fire this actress, we're gonna have to reshoot these 2 days of stuff that we've already shot. I was like,
that's thousands of dollars.
Right. It's like, I was like, and we don't have this time or the money. It's like, so in that instance, I was able to convince him not to fire her. Right.
Mm-hmm. So it was just logic. It was logical.
Right. But it's like sometimes, and there are a few directors that are bipolar just because the profession attracts some people that are highly creative,
Mm-hmm.
and I've worked with many of these guys, and so that's challenging too,
Mm-hmm.
So I think, it's trying to be the calm one on set is my goal, is trying to, okay, I know this huge problem is in front of us, but let's think about it, because if we're being loud and angry about it, it's not going to solve itself, So I just try to come up with as many solutions as possible and talk to him in a calm, assertive way. And I don't know if that's answering the question, but
it is. I mean, it's it's tough when you have an out of control director. It's kind of like having an out of control general. Like, all of a sudden they're firing people or attacking places that they shouldn't be attacking as a general. So the same thing goes with a director. He could, out of control director can bring down the entire movie within minutes. And it's tough. And then you're stuck in the middle between the producer and, oh God, there's so much drama that can happen on set when you have people like that. Now, can you tell me a little bit about assistingdirecting.com, your website?
So it's just a little site that I created a couple years ago. It was funny, the domain was available, and I was like, I just got to buy this thing. And I just put blogs and articles and some downloads on there to help others that are wanting to get into assistant directing. Mm-hmm. And I just have, every time I go work on a film set, I learn something new, and I was like, oh, this could be a post, and I post it.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend of mine contact me today. And he's an AD friend of mine, but he's producing a movie. He's like, where do you get non-union extras? And I was like, well, I do use LA Casting when I'm in Los Angeles. And so that was, but I was like, that's like another topic for a blog post is finding non-union extras. I have that. I have a couple of those posts, but I don't know. I feel there's value in sharing knowledge and experiences with others. And, I wrote a book kind of about my experience.
Yeah. Can you tell me about your book?
Yeah. So it's called The Career Chose Me. And it just kind of talks about, choosing the right career, in a way that you don't have to go really find a career. That the premise is really that if you figure out who you are and what you like and what you're good at, that the career will essentially choose you. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what happened to me, in the sense that I really fell into assistant directing. I didn't know what assistant directing was, but if I did, I would have chose it a long time ago, because I love scheduling. I love budgeting. I've always been the super organized person.
God bless you, sir. God bless you, sir. I can't do that. God, that's why we need first ADs. I can't do that.
I mean, I was the editor of my school newspaper in high school, and I was telling my peers what to do. And, today I'm telling my peers what to do, so it's kind of a similar thing. So I talk about my personal story in the book, but I make it, broad, that it's not just about filmmaking. It's really about careers. But I do give some helpful hints for those that want to pursue the film industry. So the website is thecareerchoseme.com, and it is available on Amazon.
Very cool. I'll put that in the show notes.
Good.
Now, I'm going to ask you a few questions I ask all of my guests. What advice would you give a filmmaker wanting to break into the business today? Yeah, I mean, I think, like we talked about college earlier, the question is whether or not to pursue college, and then, I mean, because it may not be the best thing, and two, where to live, because the market is so fragmented now. I'm producing this movie in Louisiana right now, but right.
I also live in Los Angeles, and so you can really live in a lot of different places. So it's looking where are the tax credits, and right now in Atlanta and Louisiana, those could be good markets to live in. yes, you could go to Los Angeles or New York, but the competition is so heavy. So you just have to really, think about, do you want to be a big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond? So where do you live? But I think, being self-aware is very important. And I think that's one of the biggest things for most people is they're not enough self-aware. And, so my biggest downfall was I was like, I want to be a DP for a decade. And, I was okay. I mean, I could be a fine camera operator, or I could shoot video. But when it comes down to it, I'm not great with math. Trying to figure out what f-stop doesn't come natural to me. So it's not a great profession for me to choose if it doesn't come, not necessarily easy, but I just don't enjoy that part of it, So if I would have realized that earlier on and been more self-aware, if I would have asked more people, hey, what do you think I'm good at? What do you think I should pursue? I think that would have helped me find this position, this AD line producer position earlier, but I don't feel like I wasted that much time,
I got you.
So I don't know. Those are the main things.
Okay. Now, can you tell me what book had the biggest impact on your life or career?
I don't know if I know that. There's so many books, I don't know if there's one book, but I will say that when I was in high school, I became a voracious reader. Like I just started reading dozens of books on leadership. And that was something, that topic of leadership, I think has affected the way that I try to work and work with people. And I think if you can understand leadership and how people want to be treated, because that's a huge part of my job is trying to lead people and educate people, and trying to make the right decision,
Read a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, read nonfiction. I mean, I'm a big nonfiction reader, I guess. So I'm just, I love business books. I love there is a great book about assistant directing by, I can't remember the name of it, but it's, it'll come to me later.
I'll put it in I'll put some links in the show notes.
Yeah. So,
now what lesson took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
Lesson took me the longest to learn. I don't know. That's a tough question.
No worries.
In life. No, I think one thing that I realized a couple years ago was to stop waiting for jobs. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
like I can always apply for something off Craigslist, or I can apply for something off Mandy, or, wherever these job applications are. And that's great. But I'm not going to depend on that to provide for me a job. Right. So I've got to go out there and, like your podcast, I got to hustle. So for me, that means, I send a lot of cold emails to people that I don't know.
Like you did to me.
Exactly. Right. I go to networking events, even though I hate networking, and I have a goal where I just meet one person. I don't try to meet 10 people. I just meet one person. So there's small things. I think the biggest thing is for me is following up with people. They'll say, hey, hit me up in 3 months, and I'll put it on my calendar, and I'll hit them up in 3 months. And I think just having tenacity to, keep bugging people sometimes. And I hate being the one to bug somebody, but I'm known for that is
gotta hustle. Basically, the lesson is hustle and hustle a lot. Hustle a lot.
Hustle.
Now, what are 3 of your favorite films of all time?
3 of my favorite films. One of my favorite films is Magnolia by P.T. Anderson. And not Steel Magnolias, because people confuse that.
Very different movies.
I know. I haven't even seen Steel Magnolias, so I don't know. But I just love the tracking shots in Magnolia. And I just love PT. the rain and the falling frogs and
Sure.
Yeah. So my other favorite movie is Zoolander.
Of course.
Because I can quote the entire movie.
Sure.
The third movie, I don't know. I'd have to think. I mean, I love spy films, so I just probably have to say like one of the Bourne movies. I just think they're well made.
Now, where can people find you?
So people can find me. My personal website is thefilmfixer.us, and my email is brandon@radiantfirst.com.
Oh, God. I'm sorry you did that, but all right. I told you not to, but all right. Now you're going to get it.
I know, right? Yeah. Yeah. And let's see. All my social media handles are Radiant First, so you can look me up that way.
And then assistantdirecting.com.
Yes, correct.
Very cool. Brandon, man, thank you so much for being on the show, man. You've dropped some first AD knowledge bombs on the tribe today, so I really appreciate it, man.
Hey, really appreciate it, Alex. Thanks so much.
I want to thank Brandon for coming on and dropping some first AD knowledge bombs on the tribe. If you want to get links to anything we discussed in this episode, just head over to indiefilmhustle.com/254 to download the show notes. And guys, on a side note, I am working on another secret project, not a feature film. I think I've discussed this before, but this is going to be huge. The biggest thing that I've ever done for the tribe, for filmmakers in general, and I really do hope it provides a tremendous amount of value because it's really, really a lot of work. But I am working on that as we speak. So keep an eye out in the next month or two for an announcement and then a launch, hopefully sometime in October, November sometime. But just trust me, you guys are going to flip the hell out when I talk to you about it. So keep an eye out. And if you haven't already, head over to filmmakingpodcast.com and leave the show a good review on iTunes. It really helps us out a lot. I really appreciate it. And as always, keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.